Greece alone cannot manage this crisis. A country with 10 million people cannot handle the second highest per capita number of asylum cases in Europe. Others need to help. And they can't continue to help in the disorganized way of the last few years. The European Commission is not in a position to direct this. What you really need, very concretely, some of the big asylum agencies in Europe that have experience, that have capacity to sit down with the Greeks and say, how do we manage to make sure that anybody who arrives on the islands, we have an asylum decision in line with EU law and of quality within 8 weeks, including appeal. And then, after 8 weeks, anybody who arrives in Lesbos or Chios is either returned to Turkey or moved away from the island, to the mainland or to another EU country. This must be the goal, and at the moment, amazingly, after 4 years, the plan, the scenario of how many resources you need, translators, case workers, police, security, doctors, psychologists, interpreters, for this to work doesn't exist.
So now we actually have quite a lot of very talented and very skilled people out there somewhere, but what we haven't really done is to try to map out what these people are doing, what are their networks, where they live, what kind of jobs they're doing, what's the academy, what's the IT sector. And once we would have a whole picture, we would actually be able to use some of the assets of diaspora that exists at the moment. What you have is a damaging economies of all the countries in the Western Balkans, plus Croatia probably to some extent, because although it entered the EU in 2013, it still experiences really high waves of immigration. What we don't have is this mechanism that will connect people or actually provide portability of benefits between the region and the other countries in the Western Europe that would enable them to go back and forth. And that would be, I think, the key when they have a possibility to go somewhere, to get skills, to get exposure, to get everything they want, basically, but have a possibility to anchor themselves back in the region or do some pieces of work that they're interested in.
I think the bottom line really comes down to protection. A lot of the reports that we have on people moving along these routes is that they're facing extreme human rights abuses. If we can think of a way to regularize the process, open up legal pathways, which then removes the role that smugglers and criminal gangs have to play in moving people in an undocumented and unsafe way, I think that to me is successful. Successful would be a tick for successful migration. The EU is a very big player. I think since the quote-unquote was the EU-Soviet migration crisis of 2015, we have a different view, I think, in terms of what is crisis, was really just to try and pour some money into the region in a few different ways. So one was to really look at tackling root causes and trying to build livelihoods and sustainability of those livelihoods so that people wouldn't feel a need to have to look very far outside of their countries or their regions in terms of being able to respond to their economic demands. But another way that we've seen that has faced actually quite a lot of criticism is the EU and also other donor governments putting in a lot of money to securitization of migration, supporting governments like Sudan, which has been widely criticized by different actors in terms of border security, arming guards, and then kind of funding a regime that already has been criticized for atrocities against its own people, but also migrants, refugees transiting through or stationed within the country. So I think some red lines maybe need to be drawn in terms of what engagement really looks like, and does engagement then lead to more harm for people on the move? If it does, I think we need to rethink that kind of engagement. But where it doesn't, and it really is supporting communities to become more resilient to shocks and conditions in the country, then I think it's a plus.